My name is Leo Connors, and welcome to The Ring and All Other Sports. Tonight, I got a very special guest here to tell a crazy accident. Honestly, Anthony Stone, professional wrestler, everybody. How you doing, Anthony?
Hey, I'm doing great, and Leo, it's been a long time since I've been wanting to come on the show. I'm glad we finally have this opportunity to make it come alive, so thank you for having me.
Not my pleasure, honestly. I think, like I talked to you off air, the only place to start is tell us on January 27th, 2019, you literally had like a freak accident in the wrestling ring. I think it's just easy to hear from you. What happened that day?
Yeah, so it's we've just passed the anniversary date, as we just mentioned. It was the 27th, and you know, it's definitely a story that was right from the get-go, like immediately, you know, mistranslated, because you know, within a few hours there was already viral reports on the internet and all the dirt sheets saying that, you know, my opponent Rex Lawless had done some double stomp off the top rope, and I could tell you that was not the case. So we were doing a taping at the Chikara Factory School at the time, and what happened was we were involved in a wrestling match. He was going for a second rope leg drop, which at the time was like a more signature move. He's a very athletic competitor, so
big guy too.
Oh yeah, and you know, it was something that he wanted to showcase his ability. And you know, I've been in the ring with him plenty of times, and I was always, you know, safe with him, and he was always safe with me. And unfortunately, you know, as we always say in the squared circle, accidents can happen anytime, no matter the most simplest moves can happen. And in his particular case, he was on the second rope, and as he went to jump, the rope rolled, so his trajectory was now completely off. And you know, unfortunately, what happened was he just, you know, went for that leg drop and just landed directly on me. At that immediate moment, like, I knew, you know, things were off and wrong, because I was seeing white stars and brights everywhere. And I immediately rolled out of the ring. It was a live taping, so it was like streaming live as well. And I rolled out. They gave me the count out. You know, they kind of, you know, let me push myself to the side. I was on the floor for a solid 45 minutes before I was eventually able to get up on my own power. And, you know, at that point, you know, Drew Cordero, you know, he, of course, was checking on me and was like, hey, what's going on? Do we need to call an ambulance? And I said, listen, Drew, like, I don't want to call an ambulance. I don't want that bill on me. I don't want, you know, any, you know, negative attention on your production. So just let me, you know, be in my own little corner. And when I'm ready to leave, then we can address that. Eventually, they did bring me to a local hospital. Because again, this was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and so we get there, and I have to give a lot of credit to Drew, and I'm gonna bring up a name that might not be popular with the wrestling fans, but again, I give credit where it's due. Chris Dickinson, he was with me. They stood with me side by side, alongside with another local guy that I just met that day. It was the Whisperer. Yeah, I was already a huge fan of his. I'd watch his stuff, but then, like, as an individual, you know, for someone that had never met me that day, he stood with me that whole time. Those three in particular stood with me the whole time until I was checked into that hospital, which was 8 hours altogether. They were with me for 8 hours. You know, eventually I got in. I was giving multiple tests and CAT scans, and that's where I was diagnosed with having my collarbone was broken. I had 4 fractured ribs, and both my lungs were collapsed.
Wow.
And to think, Leo, up until that point, I never broke a bone in my body.
Really?
Yep. I've been wrestling professionally since I was 17 years old. And up until that point, and all the crazy stunts and all the wild matches I've been involved with, never broken a bone in my body. And then I decided to break half of me at once.
Right? That is crazy. And
yeah.
And the guys that stuck by you, that's fantastic. There are great people in this world, and some may be controversial sometimes, you know?
Hey,
but it's what that person did for you is what really counts for you.
Absolutely, absolutely, and all three of the individuals have all been very supportive, and again, like I can't speak highly enough of their character to be there with me when they didn't have to, but all three of them did, and I'll never take that away from them.
Nice. How many days were you in the hospital?
So I was in Philadelphia for 4 days before my parents and my wife they drove down there to come pick me up. And then once I got back home, I saw my own primary doctor, and then that's when I had to get a second surgery performed, because the thing was, when I was in Philadelphia, I had to have emergency. Both my lungs were collapsed, so I wasn't breathing on my own. So they had to cut me up. They put tubes in me, and they literally pumped me with oxygen for 4 hours and cleaned up all the blood that was building up, and it was a very, very scary thing. But afterwards, when I went back, I had another surgery performed because I needed a metal plate that I still have to this day for my collarbone.
Okay.
So that was about 2 weeks after that. The entire recovery time from that day till when I was actually able to train and get back to normalcy in my life was about 5.5 months. I say 6 months altogether because it was 4 months of physical therapy, which I was going 3 times a week. And then it slowly went down to 2 days and then 1 day. And then by the end of May, I was technically cleared to go back to normal work routines, but I still took until the mid of June to fully take my time. And that's, so I always say it was a total of 6 months for my total recovery.
Wow. Now, as a fan of yours, I know for a fact that you're in great shape when that accident happened, right?
Yes.
Good thing, huh? Honestly.
That was very, very, very good thing, yes.
Right. Absolutely, man. Definitely saved your life. It really did.
Yep. The scariest moment was, having the doctor tell me if Rex had landed 3 inches closer to my neck, then we wouldn't be having the conversation that we were having. And, as wrestlers, we like to think sometimes that we're unbreakable. And a lot of the feats that we do inside the ring, of course, we're skilled professionals, and we have a lot of time to hone our craft and to train for, these types of moments. But again, it was just a leg drop off the second rope, something that you think is a very simple maneuver. It wasn't it was something outrageous. It wasn't hey, go give me a power bomb and I'm going to reverse into a Hurricane Rana. Nothing over the top. It was just a leg drop that did it. So, anytime that I'm around anyone that's younger than me, I always have to instill that, bit of reality, say, hey, listen, any moment, no matter how many times you've done the same thing, it only takes one maneuver. And Hayabusa, he was the king of the aerial attack, and a simple Asai moonsault off the second rope broke his neck. What we do is a real life, situation every time you step in the ring, and no one, guys and girls, they can never forget that.
Right. And like you said, I bet you Rex Lawless has done that move 800 times, if not more. You know what I mean? And it just happened. It's just crazy. I'm sure he reached out to you, right?
Oh, of course.
Right.
He reached out, and nobody wants to see anyone get hurt or injured.
Right.
So he had a guilt trip forever and a day. Ironically enough, around the same time that I was injured, his significant other, Willow, was also recuperating from a really life-threatening injury. And God bless her, because not only did she recover, but now we see her on a weekly basis almost on AEW. And it's great seeing those comeback stories, and seeing that not only did she recover, but now she's thriving. But to go back to Rex, we talk fairly regularly on social media, and he's always saying, hey man, I'm glad you're doing great. I'm yeah, man, and same to you. There's never been any ill thoughts on that, because again, professional wrestling, that's what we sign up for. It could happen. And the fact that he still like, talks to me and is like pretty like, hey man, like I'm glad you're okay. Like, yeah, me too, man. I'm glad I'm okay too. And yeah, he's great. He's a great guy.
Yeah, I've seen him wrestle plenty of times. I've never met him, but definitely a pro's pro. When I did read a little bit and found out who you were wrestling, I was like, well, yeah, no wonder why. You know what I mean? Because Rex is a big boy.
He is.
All right. Let's just move right along with the interview. I want to go back a little bit. Where did you grow up?
So I am legitimately from New Bedford, Massachusetts, and I always wanted to be proud of my hometown. So, I never wanted to say I was from Boston, Mass, or anywhere that was more, popular in Massachusetts. Born and raised New Bedford, Mass.
Nice. Reminds me of me. I grew up in Lowell.
Yep.
All right. When did you first see pro wrestling?
So I remember the very first televised event I watched was the 1991 Survivor Series with Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was watching at the time because I was still like little, and all my family got together to watch this event, and it was like wow, like everyone was in shock because Hulk Hogan like lost the WWF title, and it was like, dude, and everyone was like so amazed by it. It wasn't until 1994, I was 10 years old, and it wasn't until 1994 when I started to religiously watch wrestling, because my favorite of all time is Bret the Hitman Hart, and he had that big victory against Yokozuna at WrestleMania 10, and he was one of the smaller guys, right? That everyone always talks about, and he kind of set the path of maybe it is possible to get involved and really want to do it, because at the time all I had was backyard wrestling,
right?
And
everybody did it.
Of course, absolutely. But it wasn't until I was 16 that I actually found another local independent wrestler by the name of Dre. He went by Onyx, and it was a famous tag team at the time with EOS, the Elements of Suicide.
Okay.
So it was him, and his group that kind of welcomed me and our group into, his ring at the time that he had, and that's where I started getting my feet a little wet. And then it was about a year after that, now I'm 17, and when I was formally welcomed to go with Yankee Pro Wrestling, now referred as Top Rope Promotions.
Nice.
They had a wrestling school, which of course was ran by Brickhouse Baker.
Yep.
Scott Ashworth, Redemption. They all, Nick Steele, God rest his soul. They all operated the school there Tuesdays and Thursdays. And that's when I really dove into it and really wanted to learn the proper way to wrestle and to train and to entertain,
Right.
So that's kind of where the beginning of my journey kind of starts up.
Nice. Now, was that still Joe running it then?
It was still Joe Eugenio. Yep. It was still him. Yep.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So I know that you just said your family loved wrestling when you were little.
Yes.
Did you get your sister into it? Yeah, because you have a younger sister who wrestles.
Yeah, I do, and I would like to take the compliments for getting her involved, because she grew up with her 3 older brothers doing it and stuff,
right?
And she definitely got interested in it, and it was I like to take credit for it, but ultimately she grew her own passion.
Right.
With it, and she made her own path. It's funny that because a lot of the times it wasn't until later on in both of our careers when we finally kind of connected together, because she went her own way and I was doing my own thing, and it was it was really cool that she got involved, and I was always really proud of her, because she made it look so much easy where I had a much stronger learning curve. It took me a little bit longer to get things. She was more natural about it.
Right. Now, she's definitely very talented. Now, where did you first team up? Was that Lucky Pro?
Lucky Pro Wrestling, yep.
Yeah. I might have been there. I'm serious. I might have been there that night. In Clinton?
Yes.
I probably was. Yeah, wow. That's awesome. See, I don't remember. I have a bad memory. I interview people all the time. You know what I mean? It's like hard to remember what everybody says. But all right, so when did you go to your first pro wrestling show?
The very first pro wrestling show I went to was the same year, was in 1994, and they were doing the WrestleMania 10 Revenge Tour, which was at Providence Civic Center at the time. I think they refer to it as the AMP now. It's gone through so many different names, but at the time it was the Providence Civic Center.
Right.
And once again, it was headlined by Bret and Owen Hart. And it was so awesome to watch. It was the first live show. The very first live pay-per-view I attended was the King of the Ring that happened a few years later, that same year.
Yeah, that's right. That's wild. The first show you went to was Bret versus Owen?
Yep.
Oh man, that must have been fantastic.
Oh, it was awesome.
All right, when you first started watching, obviously you said you're a Bret Hart guy, but did you like other guys? Anybody else?
Absolutely. And so eventually, as you're training and you now, I'm starting to break the WWF bubble, right? Because at the time I'm just a WWF fanboy, and that's all I know because national TV. Like I wasn't even, honestly, Leo, between me and you, I wasn't even familiar with WCW until the New World Order came into play.
Oh wow!
Like that's how much of the bubble I was in. But then when I started training and of course, your colleagues that talk about different products and different wrestlers and stuff like that. Eventually, I was introduced to ECW. Yeah. And then once I caught my eye on Rob Van Dam, I said, "Damn!" He took the technical aspect of wrestling to all new heights, and how innovative he was. It really captivated me. And I was like, "Wow!" That guy right there, and I can definitely say I tried my best to mimic my style based around him and try to throw a little bit of Bret Hart, because that's when you grow up and you become a wrestler, you kind of want to craft yourself to your heroes and to make it a little bit yourself. So that's where I like to think my style comes from a fresh blend of Bret Hart and Rob Van Dam.
And that's like paying tribute to them, too. They may not know it, you know what I mean? But you do. And now everybody else does. All 15 viewers. I'm just kidding. I have a feeling, honestly, yours is going to be well watched. I really do think so.
Let's hope so.
I just wanted to have you on, so this is great.
Yeah.
When did you know you wanted to be a wrestler?
I mean, I know the cliche answer is always as soon as I was born I was wanted to be, but I think I wanted to be a wrestler, because again, it wasn't a realistic goal until I was 10 years old and saw Bret Hart doing it. And then, I would say 16, honestly, because there was a lot of self-doubt, because of course my parents and, teachers and you tell oh, you can't do that. That's unrealistic. You can't do that. But I probably, when I was 16, when I thought, and I was really bumping and really going through the ropes, running literally, that's when I was okay, I really think I can do this. I think eventually I can get enough grasp and really, make a run with this. And I think I was able to do that for a solid 18 years.
Right. Nice. So you said earlier that Brickhouse Baker trained you, right? Who started again? I'm sorry. Who was the first guy you worked with?
Again, it was Onyx. He went by Onyx.
Onyx, okay.
Yep.
So, but then eventually you got there with Brickhouse. And who else was in the class? I know his boys must have been, but.
Let's see. So in that class, Jason Blade. Jason Blade was still a regular over there. The Portuguese Stallion was still around. Chris Blackheart was still there. Let's see. We're going back quite a long time here. I mean, I did bring some guys with my group over as well. Pat Masters.
Oh yeah.
Pat Masters came along with me. Bobby Biggins. You know, he was a fellow New England guy for a short while. Um, and Yeah, I mean, the thing you got to remember about, wrestling training and stuff is the classes, they always fluctuate too. Like
Right.
some
Oh,
faces
yeah.
are pretty regular, and then you always have like a splash of new faces and people that
Right.
come once a week, every other week, or all the time. But as far as regular faces go, I would say those would be the ones.
Okay. Nowadays, it's nice. I see a lot of guys, they train at different places. You know what I mean? They might be a lockup guy, but they'll go up to the new place, Elite Pro Wrestling Academy. They'll go to Chase.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? They'll bounce around. You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
nice to see that because I'm sure you know it wasn't always like that.
No, no, no. And I always tell, especially like the younger generation of guys and girls that are like starting to get their feet wet too. Like it's great to have a home-based wrestling school, and it's wonderful to have that foundation. But eventually, you do need to branch out, and that's exactly what I did. I reached out to Mike Quackenbush around 2005, 2006, because there's a point where you don't want to become stale, right? And there's a point where you can only learn so much. And I was at the point with my training where I wanted to improve. And the only way you're going to ever do that is by, putting yourself in a situation where you're going to be around people that are better than you.
Right.
So, Philadelphia, New Jersey, that's still to this day a pretty hotbed for, wrestling.
Oh, absolutely.
And, that's where I mentioned his name earlier tonight. That's where I met Chris Dickinson. That's where I met Jaga. Through there we had a pretty a good relationship. Because again, I'm never gonna talk bad about the guy, but you circle yourself around those individuals that are better than you. And, I spent an entire summer up there, just under his learning tree and all the seminars. And, at one point he even cracked a joke. It was like, Anthony, you could probably run one of these because I'd gone to so many of his seminars because he is a wonderful teacher. His YouTube channel that he has, Until We Make It, I still watch it to this day.
Nice.
He's a wonderful, wonderful trainer.
Excellent. Yeah, I enjoyed their comic book style and stuff like that. I wasn't a fan where I had to watch everything. I just would dispel belief when I watched it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And I mean, I flipped when Dragon came out.
Yep.
All right. So why don't you tell us about the very first match you had?
Very first match I had. All right. So in New Bedford, we had this place called the Fisherman's Club, and it was just like a very old. I mean, it still is. It's still up to this day, but it's just like a really small venue, rundown. Like we had like very, very, very low ceiling. So not only was the school like a low boy, but it was also like you're gonna laugh at this. It was like a 12 by 12 ring.
Okay.
It wasn't like a traditional like 16 by 16 or 18 by 18. It was like a much smaller ring because again, this place was very, very small. Like they had like the stage, and then like our locker room was just literally like a side door with like little like curtains covering it, and it was a really small place. But they made it work.
Right.
And I had no idea what I was doing. Right. So we have a baby face and we have a heel. I was working with an individual. It's called Billy Brax. So I'm the bad guy. I have no idea how to be a bad guy. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't want to just boo and like you suck, whatever. So there was a CVS across the street, and I don't know why I thought this was a good idea, but I thought it was going to give me heat. So like I bought like this package of one of my favorite snacks, still to this day, mind you, of oatmeal cream pies, like little Debbie snacks.
Yeah, I like those too.
Okay, so I thought it was a great idea to like throw them out to the crowd, like, oh, here's your snacks, here you go, like essentially, calling them oversized, and it's I don't know, like it's it was something that I was experimenting with because I didn't know what I was doing. So like I'm just gonna throw this to the crowd to make fun of them because whatever they're fat and stuff. And I look back at it now. I'm like, oh my god, that was terrible. But it's still a story that like it only comes up once in a blue moon. I'm like, yeah, I thought it was a good idea at the time.
Did they throw them back at you?
One guy
That's why I'm thinking it might not be a good idea.
one guy did, and it's whatever. It's like all right, like it was a unique situation, and that was the first and only time I ever did that.
Something you said earlier too reminded me to talk to you about this. You were booked. You've been booked by a lot of companies. Like really. I'm looking at it. You are one of the more traveled independent wrestlers. New England, at least. Not saying you're number one, but you are up there.
Yeah. I definitely, there was definitely a long stretch of time where I consider myself a journeyman. And,
yes.
I went as far as north as Maine. I've gone as far south as Florida. I've gone as far west as Indianapolis. So, I definitely, took pride in that. And again, once I broke out of like the New England bubble, like I definitely wanted to venture out and try different territories and, because of all the stories you've heard from, the olden times of how, crowds were different. And that's a true statement. And I wanted to experience that. And I'm glad that I did. And, it's definitely, you always learn something new. And by going and experiencing these different crowds and seeing how like some things that were in the 80s could still work in the modern day, like that was huge, But yeah, I definitely, travel. I've definitely done my fair share of traveling, and it's always a blessing to look back at it and, have those wonderful experiences.
Absolutely. Now we got some fan questions. Let's just jump right into those.
Yeah, sure.
Matt Patero, who is actually training, he is the politician. He's traded up at the Elite Pro Wrestling Academy.
Okay.
I saw your match with Alec Price a few months back at Live Pro Wrestling. I thought you guys did a great job, but it was the only time I saw you. Will you be taking more bookings in 2023 throughout New England?
Absolutely.
Yes.
A lot of people and a lot of promoters and a lot of wrestlers, to be fair, thought that, I'd be, all set and done, after the injury that I had. And trust me, I took a long time, I put all the things in consideration. I have a wonderful family that I love to come home to every day. 6 children, 4 boys, 2 girls.
Wow. It's a big family nowadays. Nowadays, it is.
I love it because like I refer to them as like my little stable. I got my 4 horsemen, and then I got my 2 daughters, and it's wonderful. But
it's awesome.
So to answer the question, absolutely, I definitely you will see me back in a ring in 2023. I am very selective with the bookings that I do take place, though, because, going through the trauma that I did, it is a huge wake-up call. I promise that, Anthony Stone will be seen in 2023.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. All right. Now, this is the reason why we opened the show with what happened. Sheldon Goldberg. Great. I love Sheldon. I know you do too.
Absolutely.
How is your health these days? Any residual effects from the injury?
Thankfully, no. I'm glad to say and glad to report that, through all the physical therapy that I've done and all the conditioning that I do, naturally, I was able to maintain about 90% of my strength. So, I'm forever grateful for that. And, I'm still, doing really good as far as like my personal health goes, like all these years later. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Glad to hear that too. Sheldon did have a follow-up. Some of these questions are loaded sometimes, so it's hard to ask them. Did Beyond do anything to help you after it happened?
100%. I won't go into the full details of what.
No, you don't have. That's yours.
Right, but I will say that Drew Cordero was very kind. in his regards to, you know, certain contributions that he made, and just for my mental health also, be checking in there and say, listen, you always have a home here. He's forever grateful for that. And then at one point, a GoFundMe was created, and you know, he sponsored that, and
Right.
of course with Beyond having the huge outreach they have, you know, social networking, that did you know, tremendous, you know, forever grateful for that too. But yeah, you know, Drew and Beyond Wrestling, you know, like great, you know, that's gonna be forever one of my homes in wrestling. And yeah, they very, very supportive, you know, even to this day. Like,
Right.
we still talk pretty regularly. So yeah, they, you know, they were very wonderful, and Drew was very kind to me.
And I believe that. I've met Drew a few times and just can tell, you know what I mean? He's a man of character. He really is,
Absolutely.
you know?
Yep. You know, he has done so much for the independent scene, and
No doubt.
you know, given a spotlight on so many, you know, wrestlers, and you know, I mean, a handful of them get signed to national contracts, and you know, like it's you know, he's a wonderful person who gives opportunities. You know, without a doubt, Drew is a terrific individual.
Absolutely. And I've had talks with him about him coming on the show. So hopefully that's a goal I can set and have him on here sometime this year.
That'd be great.
David Baker. No question. No question.
Okay.
Thank you for 17 years of working together. One of the best brothers I've met in this crazy biz. Much love to you and the family, always.
And as much love right back to him. Quickly going back to my injury.
Yes.
When I finally decided to get back into the ring, I had personally asked him to be my first match back.
Wow. All right. Yeah. Because you guys have
so-
wrestled so much, right? Too.
Yes. Yep. And I saw it as like a true test for me, because if people don't know this, he hits really hard.
Oh, I believe.
And like it's, you know, I mean, look at his dad, Brickhouse Baker. You know, like, so like when we were training, like that was like the mentality. It was like, you gotta like really, you gotta make it feel real.
Yeah.
And you know, for smaller guy like me, like, you know, with me like clubbing the guy to make that sound effect, you know, he hates leg slaps. I don't know if you know this, but he's very vocal
Yes.
about
Oh, they all hate them. All the Bakers.
they all do. So like, what did he tell us? Like, you could still make a sound by clubbing the upper back of an individual, and you're still going to hear that.
Yeah.
And so that was, you know, strongly instilled in his son. And you know, when I asked him to be my first match back, I was like, hey, listen, we're gonna go wild. I need to see what my body can handle. So like, I want to go around the ring. I want to be slammed on the ground. I want to do this, and don't hold back. And you know, he was my true test. I said, if I can go through a match with David Baker, then I can go through a match with anybody.
Nice. That's awesome. That's a great story. Hey, Dave, thanks for just telling them how much you love them. All right. One of the best fans in New England, Jerry Lane.
Absolutely.
Jerry says, I've been a huge fan of your work since I first saw you at Lucky Pro Wrestling. My favorite match was the casket match you had in Clinton versus the Devil's Reject, Brandon Webb. Do you plan on coming back to LPW this year?
I would certainly love to come back to Lucky Pro Wrestling. They have a whole new crop of talent there.
They do.
And it's, you know, I mean, that's the circle of wrestling, you know, like you have a crop of guys and girls, and then, you know, they move on, and then what do you got to do? You got to rebuild, and you got to reestablish that roster. And you know, they have a lot of people over there right now that, you know, I would certainly like to get my back, and you know, I would consider Lucky Pro Wrestling another home of mine, because they were also, you know, they were also very kind as far as, you know, contributions, and they had their own little fundraiser event at one of their shows, and you know, it was very, very, very kind of them to do that. So, you know, I would definitely like to see myself in Lucky Pro Wrestling in 2023, without a doubt.
Well, I hope so too. But you're right, though. Those are other great guys of character, too. You know what I mean? They really are. Chris, Jim, all of those guys. Great guys.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Han Wonder. Do you know who Han Wonder is?
Han Wanda.
Yeah. Do you? I don't know who it is, so I'm just going to read that question.
Yeah, sure.
Have you ever, I'm thinking it might be him. Have you ever interrupted a main event that involved Scott Levesque?
Okay. Now I know who. Now I know who we're talking about, and I will keep their identity private for the sake of the outreach of your show. All right. So Scott Levesque, he's an individual that was part of the backyard wrestling group that I was a part of, and so not to go in the grand detail of the story, but there was a wrestling promotion that I was a part of at the time that we had a pretty bad falling out, and I will 100%. I was 100% fault in this. And this is something that everyone that's listening to, don't follow in my footsteps. This is what I'm about to share is 100% the wrong thing to do.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
So,
disclaimer: do not do this.
Do not do this. Also, do not throw oatmeal cream pies at fans.
Yes.
So it's not good cheapy. Anyway, so the very next event that they were having, Scott Levesque was in the main event of the title, and while this match is happening, I'm out there sprouting my words, and I had another buddy of mine kind of like watch my back in case I got jumped, and I made a big stink on someone's promotional show, which is again it's a very unprofessional thing to do, and it's something I'm not proud of to this day, and I have apologized numerous times to Scott Levesque about it, because it was definitely I was young and dumb. And it was definitely not the right way to handle it. It should have been handled behind, closed curtains, and it should have been handled in a more appropriate way. But to answer the question, yes, there was an unplanned run-in during a main event show in front of a live crowd, and it's one of my more, not so proud moments.
Well, guess what? It takes a man also to admit stuff like that. You know what I mean? I know in my past, I've had to admit things too, and people are only human. Yeah. And by the way, he also said at the end of after the question, glad you're back. He said, just kidding. Glad you're back. So he was teasing that hard wonder. Off air, I'm going to guess. Off air, I think I know who it is.
All right.
We got Kevin Quinn.
I love Kevin Quinn.
Maybe you can turn this into a question. Some of my favorite matches were with you. Just saying. Thankful. So what were some of your best matches that Kevin officiated?
So, I mean, right off the top of the bat, and I think this is one of the spotlight matches that really put my name on the map and really kind of like really pushed me out there as far as getting like more notoriety and not only New England, but in independent wrestling at the time. So the very first American Rana event, which was at Fat Music, I had the privilege to, step in the ring with AR Fox.
Wow.
And, Kevin Quinn was there for that. And, that's a moment for me that, I'll never forget, because I remember like being told that I was going over. Now, this is a big deal.
Right.
At the time, like he was like an international champion with like Dragon Gate. He was like a big time player. He's going wrestling internationally,
is, isn't he?
And still is, exactly. Yeah. And for like it was always like a taboo thing, especially with my upbringing. And like you can't ever pin a champion. Like you can't ever go over a champion because they have to add prestige to that title. They have to make it valuable, and they have to keep that. Right. So I remember going up to him personally, like, hey, sure, like, is this okay? Like, are you sure we're going to be able to do this? And he's like, yep, 100%, no problem. And,
that's awesome.
And it was so like off the show, like very cool, very casual about it, and he was like, no, like I'm 100% fine with it. And, I'll never take that away. And that was like a big, learning experience. It's like, you know what, that was huge for me. Like, for someone of his caliber to be willing to do me the favors like that was huge. So Kevin Quinn being involved in that match was wonderful.
I bet it had to be a little calming. You're probably nervous. Knowing Kevin, did he pick up on it and come over and say, "Don't worry" or something?
I mean, we were both kind of nervous. Like that was like a big time wrestling event. Yeah. Like up until that time, Beyond Wrestling wasn't really doing like a lot of live shows. And when we did that particular live show, that was kind of like, all right, we're going all in. Like this is gonna make or break it. And that particular event, they made it. And look at them now, practically running weekly shows with Wrestling Open and having huge super shows. They just had one this past weekend, as a matter of fact. So it's great to have a part of that growing, because when I started with Beyond Wrestling, they were still doing private tapings in Elyria, Ohio. That was only being released on like YouTube and MySpace at the time.
Wow.
MySpace, yeah.
That's a long time ago.
It is. It is a long time. Absolutely.
Well, I think I'm on like 16, 17 years on Facebook.
Crazy.
I love it though. I don't do it as much as I should for the show, honestly. I'll be a guy that'll be online one day, all day, and then off the next, So, all right, Maverick Wild. How do you feel you do in the ring? No, how do you feel what you do in the ring would mesh with a more old school wrestler? I think Mav wants to wrestle. You.
I would absolutely be honored if that matchup ever takes place, because Maverick Wild was a guy when he was doing the Iron 8 tournament, and he was like phenomenal to watch. He took wrestling and the realism to a whole new height for me. And of course, like he's a really really New England guy, and he was someone that was like, I always thought like, oh man, that was a missed opportunity for me. Like that would have been someone, that I'd love to get into the ring with. And I know from time to time on Facebook, he kind of teases about training and getting back involved into it. And he shares, some nostalgic photos and some videos from time to time. And like, God, like I've always said, like, that's a guy that was in shape. Right? Though?
Yes. That had to be like a motivator for you, because like when you were young.
Yeah, and another private story I could share with you was going back to MySpace. There was a wrestling match that I had, and I remember reaching out to him like, "Hey, listen, like I'm really, I value your opinion highly. Would you critique this match for me?" Like that's how much I looked up to him, because like here's the guy that like he was like, in my opinion, he was a gatekeeper of New England, because if you can get his approval, then you've made it. Like he was like someone that I highly value still to this day. And I sent him a video of it, and he critiqued the match for me, and I was like, really, thank you. The Meteora, the double knees off the top rope that I like to do. He was the one who told me like that should be a finish. Like that's an impactful move.
Right.
And I was doing it like at the time it was like a quick little spot thing. He was like, no, you got to make that meaningful, more impactful. So talked about Maverick Wild. That's the constructive criticism that I got from a more experienced worker, to have certain moves be in the right place so they're more meaningful. So I think like our styles would mesh. I think we'd have a terrific match, and he's someone that I can easily like say we can go. I mean, I that's an individual I think we can easily go a half-hour match and have the fans be very captivated, without a doubt. Like I won't even blink of an eye on that.
Nice. All I could say is you really should hit him up. Just hit him up on Facebook. Talk to him.
Absolutely.
I definitely I want to talk about some like other wrestlers in the area, guys you've worked. And right up the bat, I know you had a lot of matches with Pat Masters and Jose Perez. to
Absolutely.
the edge.
Yep.
Tell me about your relationship with those guys.
So I mean, with Pat Masters, again, the relationship is kind of already been said, but
Right.
we were backyard buddies. And, like, the kid was 11 years old when I met him, and he was already at that time so passionate about wanting to be a wrestler and stuff.
Right.
So once he got in the independent scene, he was just doing his thing, was amazing. And with Jose Perez, he was me and Jose Perez was the very first match at the very first Lucky Pro Wrestling show.
Really? I did not know that. Wow.
Yes. And so, he's like another, like, New England, veteran that I highly looked up to. Yeah.
Really?
What I loved about Jose Perez was he had the old school mentality, but brought like the modern wrestling and kind of like meshed it together. And I learned a lot from him, specifically for that mentality, because, like, we have guys like Brickhouse, and I love Brickhouse Baker, and he's very set in his ways, and having things technically sounded, and having spots, and with all due respect, like, you can take the old stuff and you can mesh it with the modern wrestling, and that's what Jose was wonderful with.
Right.
And when he had like his retirement tour, he of course reached out to me and said, I want you to be part of that tour. And like that was awesome for him to consider me for that.
Right.
And, so my relationship, and, still to this day, like I had a mixed tag match, last year at one of, House of Bricks reunion show. And, he came down and helped coach the match because, once again, it doesn't matter if you're not physically involved in the business. Like, I'll still reach out to you and say, hey, I value your opinion. What do you think? And, Jose Perez, I love the guy. I
Right.
love the guy for him always having not only outside the box thinking, but also that ability to recognize, like, we can take the old school wrestling and we can take the modern stuff and mesh it and still make wonderful art with it.
Right. All right, now I'm going to bring up another tag team. One of these guys is in 2 tag teams that scare the crap out of me. Seriously. You'll hear it. You'll know why in a minute. Team Nightmare. Evan Six and Nick Steele.
Yes.
As a fan, and I know how wrestling works, and they scared me. And the other one was Evan Six and Apocalypse. The End.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh,
But, yeah, so what about Team Nightmare?
Team Nightmare. Evan Six, like, he was someone that he made you earn everything. Like, you want to talk about put realism in a wrestling ring? Like, that guy emphasized that. And yeah, like that tag team was like that's a presence right there. Like,
yeah,
you watch
absolutely.
those guys out, you watch those guys come out, and like, oh damn, like they really add value to that name. Like,
absolutely.
Without a doubt. Big, huge guys, like tough, rugged, like throw down, knock you out. Like, those guys did that. Absolutely.
And knew what type of wrestlers they were, you know what I mean?
Oh,
and
yeah.
what they were doing, Because I could talk about the late great Nick Steele all day, and I've seen him wrestle a bunch of times, but only met him once, and he couldn't have been nicer to me. How about JT Dunn?
JT
Controversial name, actually, in a way.
Yes and no. Like, he's very gifted inside the ring. A lot of people like to use the controversial phrase around him because of how sometimes he'll handle his business outside the ring. I still like to think that, one day he'll be on national television. He has had, spots with, Impact Wrestling here and there. Like we talked about being human, we all live and learn from our mistakes. And I think, like, he's been someone that's gone through a lot of that. And I still think that he has, an opportunity to, showcase his talents on a national level. Like, hey, behind the curtains, everyone has their faults and their mistakes. And, of course, the whole, relationship thing can be thrown around. But, I'm not here to bury anybody. And again, no one's perfect. Inside the ring, he's phenomenal. I'll never take that away from him.
No doubt. One of the best in New England. You can't deny that. No doubt. All right. Let's get a little on the happier side. How about Eric Dillon?
Eric Dillon.
Yeah,
yes.
Eric's a lot of fun, man. He's a funny guy.
He is a lot of fun, and he is a guy, and, you know, not diving, you know, into his personal life, but he is an individual that literally had like a rise and a fall. And, you know, now him being a lot older, a lot more mature, in my opinion, a lot more healthy. You know, he's someone that, like, when I cross paths with him, I look forward to it now because he's a much better, higher spirits. He's someone that's like really jolly and great to be around. And he's someone that I'm really glad was able to turn his life around for the better. And, you know, it's a blessing because it could have gone very south. And instead, you know, he got himself around a positive group of people and really found, you know, love and, you know, for himself. And that's what's most important. And, you know, he's someone that it's you know, he's great to be around with now.
I've had him on the show a couple times, and awesome. I know his story, and you know what I mean? I was in the same spot he was, man, and certain people didn't turn their back on me. And today, I turned 58 on the 21st, so.
You're 58?
Yeah, 58.
Oh, man. I hope to look half as good as you, Leo. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, how about, I love these guys. The Hoods.
The Hoods. Oh, yes, the Hoods. Obviously, we're all from New Bedford, Massachusetts. Right. So, you know, I love those guys. And, you know, Davey Cash, you know, they're doing some really fun things in Fairhaven. You know, they're running, like, some local shows. And he's actually trying to do his own small wrestling school now. So I'll give a quick plug for that. I was there for the inaugural, you know, opening day. Nice. For his wrestling school. So they're running Mondays and Wednesdays. You can hit them up privately on social media to get those information. You will see me there from time to time training in the ring, just saying. And yeah, so I love, you know, and Chris Pyro, you know, I was literally watching him, like, as a fan get into the ring and watching him too. I love both those guys, absolutely.
And if you, like, before you got in the business, watch him, he was a smaller guy that had to, again, gave you more confidence, saying, I can do this. Look how good he is. You know? Yeah. And that's NRG, the company that they're running. Is it going to be the name of the wrestling school, too?
I want to say so, and I will apologize if I you know, am misquoted by the name here, but I do think it's the NRG Wrestling School.
Right.
I don't know if there's like a more formal, like, you know, title for that, but I do know it's gonna be pretty much founded by them.
Okay, so anybody can hit me up, hit Davey Cash up, Chris, even hit Anthony up. You can hit me up. I'll send you in the right direction.
Absolutely.
You know? All right, now let's get a couple more names. We got a little less than 5 minutes. Okay. All right, this is a guy, Pinky Sanchez. Did he wrestle with you in Chikara?
Absolutely. Well, okay, so I didn't really have a lot of interaction with him in Chikara, but in Beyond Wrestling, absolutely. He's a very, very wild character, but also very, very gifted in the ring.
Yes.
So all my interactions with him were always unique because it was never the same thing.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah, Pinky's a good dude, man. How about Slick Wagner Brown?
Slick Wagner Brown. You know, so, you know, he's another New England old-timer that you could say is another gatekeeper because,
legend.
You know, New England legend. I think he really strongly emphasized bringing old school and modern wrestling and making it a staple because he was able to adapt with the times and, you know, continue to make a name and have, like, tremendous matches with a lot of, you know, not only New England wrestlers, but, you know, nationally recognized wrestlers too.
Nice. All right, listen, let's talk about, you were a tag team, Destruction Under Impact, with Kellen Thomas, who just won the Proving Ground Cup Friday night, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Congratulations to Kellen Thomas, the Riot.
Yes. Yep. And we still team up here and now and then. There's a promotion based in Rhode Island, the Renegade Wrestling Alliance.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They had a huge show that I was glad to be part of on Broadway, and we teamed up and we you know, wrestled against this group called the Young Guns. And you know, it was a classic veteran tag team against new up and comers, and it was a great experience. And you know, I still team with him to this day. And anytime he calls me, I'll gladly be in his corner, without a doubt.
Nice. And that was for T Phoenix, right?
Yes, it was.
And one of the young guns, AJP?
Yep.
And I'm sorry to the other one. I can't remember his name right now, and I feel bad. You forgot to?
No.
So it's a rib. We'll just call it a rib. We know who you are, but we're not going to tell you your name. I don't know. How about Chris Venom?
Chris Venom. Wow. Yeah, Chris Venom. I met him back with the NTW. He was also like affiliated with Elements of Suicide and Onyx, so the upbringing. But Chris Venom, like, God, what an awesome individual. Like, he really was kind of like the Taz of our area at the time. Like, he really emphasized suplex and that strong style.
Yeah.
Chris Venom, yeah, he's a great guy. Still to this day is in great shape and is always willing to help out anyone to take his training regime is wonderful, especially with wrestlers, because he will work out his program based on, all right, I know you're a wrestler, so these are the things that's going to condition you to become a better wrestler. So that guy's awesome.
He's another guy I had reached out to in the past that I'm definitely going to be reaching out to this year. How about, we got a tag team. How about the Crown Jewels, Jason Rumble and Damon D'Angelo? You had some matches with them, right?
I want to say only run one match with Jason Rumble. Yeah. It was only one match with them, and it resulted in like a little bit of a hard way cutting. But again, it's part of the business, it's part of wrestling. But nothing the bad to say about those guys.
Nice. All right. How about Biff Busick?
Biff Busick. Oh my God. Now that's a guy I've had quite a few matches with, and that was one of the matches that Mike Quackenbush saw personally. He said, hey, I want to take this and kind of run it with my shows. A lot of the Wrestling is Art shows, we had a lot of fun with those matches. Oh, really?
I was there in Haverhill when you wrestled some guy named Frank O'Rourke. Oh, I'm sorry, Francis O'Rourke. But he wanted to be, right?
Yeah, that's true.
That's awesome. We only got a couple seconds. I want to thank you for coming on. I'd like to do this again and just play the name game. I think that'd be very interesting. I told you about I'd love to get you and your sister together. I mean, I've never done
I think we can make that happen.
All right, thank you. Anthony, thanks again. Take care.
Leo.
Don't hang up, okay?
I'm not hanging up.
All right.
I'm not hanging up.
Hi, guys. I hope you're enjoying the show. Listen, I could use a little help to grow my YouTube channel. So if you could please like, share, and subscribe. That's most importantly, subscribe. Send me a direct message, and I'll give you a shout out here on the show. My YouTube channel is real simple. It's just my name, Leo Connors. Thanks in advance. Peace.